G'day, hi, and welcome. Alright, WW3 update, let's get into this. Okay, it's kind of funny when I do these videos. Well, it's not funny, haha, funny, but kind of strange how like things go in spurts, right? Usually everything we see is a reaction to something going on in the world where everything seems normal, dies down, you don't get a World War III update, which when I don't do World War III updates, that's a good thing. That means nothing's going on in the world that we have to concern ourselves about. That said, there's so much going on that it's almost impossible to follow it all, that type of thing. But if there's any doubt that we're in a state of war, like the Chinese have said, with the U.S. government. Now, mind you, I'm a Canadian, but you have to understand World War III. Even people in like the Marshall Islands or Papua New Guinea, they're going to be involved in this. It doesn't matter where they go. It's going to be engulf the world in a lot of ways. Just the command and conquer kind of aspect of it, of island hopping and continent hopping. There's going to be people all over the place fighting everybody, right? So I'm just, this proxy, that proxy, and it's all going to play out. But it looks like China's just had its one of those big victory parades again. I think the 70th anniversary for them. After World War II, and they're showcasing some new missiles and stuff. Now, the thing is with the Chinese stuff, it's kind of funny because they've been North Korea's done this, China's done this in the past, where they showcase this new stuff, but it's just like it's icing. It's just that there's nothing in it. These missiles, sometimes they're made out of paper mache, sometimes they're real, sometimes they're actual metal castings, and it looks real, but it's not real. So we don't know, right? So we do know, like, for example, Iran with its wooden aircraft carriers, that they're like building to scale. It's like, okay, what's that all about, things like that. So with the Chinese, you never know. But the thing is they are capable of making stuff, and I'm more inclined to believe that yes, they do have these new weapons. And they're probably showcasing them on purpose to kind of give you a little bit of the upper, a glimpse of what they have. And they do have a lot. Again, are they a 4 million man army, a 400 million man army, a 750 million man army, or anybody that's capable of age of fighting? Billion man army, whatever they're going to be, right? You're talking about one of the largest, demographics of people on the planet, right? So they got a lot of people to choose from. So we don't really know what their true potential strength is. I'm sure in an all-out war, the amount of volunteers they would have, I mean, it's like any country. Somebody invades your country, people will volunteer to fight the invaders. That said, what we're seeing, something interesting, again, if you have any doubts that we're not at war with China, and we're not just at war with China, we're at war with China, Russia, and stuff like that. Remember, the world is really divided into two categories: the Anglo-American Empire and the Eurasian Pacific Empire. These are empires that are fighting. There are no good guys here. There's empires. That's it. And their New World Order versus the Anglo-American New World Order. You don't want to be under any of them. That's so you got communism on one side and you've got totalitarian fascism on the other side. So who wins, right? Everybody seems to be losing, but no one seems to be winning on this, right? So there's no good guys here. So that said, we've seen again the 3 ports that have been blown up. One in Tianjin province, and the 10th largest shipping port in the world. And there's still speculations on who's behind it. I would more suspect the Japanese than anybody, but it would be on behalf of the U.S. because you have to understand what China has done in the past couple of weeks. We've seen the stock market going long back crazy and stuff like that in the past couple of weeks, right? But also, China's been dumping U.S. treasuries, and I think they've done it to a tune of 100 billion, maybe even a trillion. So they own $4 trillion worth of U.S. debt. So they start dumping that currency. I mean, the U.S. has got to be scrambling. There's got to be a trail of bodies on this one. I'm sure they're going to start showing up. Just watch for dead bankers everywhere. I'm not making any threats. It's just, it's a currency war, trade war, shooting war, right? And right now, this is definitely trade war. So what's going to happen is that, again, I'm not saying the Chinese side of things is any less corrupt. Sure it is. But the thing is that they're fighting back economically. And you won't hear it on the mainstream media, but I mean, again, that's big news when the Chinese dump that much U.S. currency back on the market. In other words, the United States is headed for a Zimbabwean currency. So if you wake up one morning and you're an American, and you wake up and a loaf of bread is suddenly $18,000, don't be alarmed by that. That's just the eggs, the chickens coming home to roost. This is exactly what's happened, in Mexico. I remember years ago a teacher asked me, why is a loaf of bread 10,000 pesos in Mexico? And I'm like, why wouldn't they just make it $1? It doesn't make sense. So why would you print 10,000? Why would you say 10,000? It's just make it a dollar. Once you understand why it's 10,000 pesos, then you understand what's going to happen to the United States. It's called hyperinflation. And the thing is to stave off the hyperinflation, well, we know the United States, again, I know there's a lot of my American viewers don't like it when I say this, but I'm telling you this because you need to know this. They have a debt and debt-based economy, meaning you either take their currency, sell all your commodities such as oil or whatever, wheat, you name it, metals, lumber, whatever, you sell it, you trade it globally in US dollars, or you get democracy JDAMs like most of these Middle Eastern countries have gotten. And again, that's kind of that's the fight that's going on right now. So the Chinese, well, they're doing the same things, but again, the difference between the Chinese, what they've been doing is where the United States has been blowing up bridges, the United States has been, or where the United States has been blowing up bridges, China's been going building bridges. Now, anywhere China goes, particularly in Africa and stuff like that, the United States goes and destabilizes. Nigeria, starts wanting to develop its resources. China offers to help to do this. All of a sudden, you've got a Boko Haram problem, right? So you get the idea. And it's always coincidental that these well-funded jihadi groups show up anywhere China seems to want to develop, right? So you get the idea that there's a dirty war going on here. I'm not trying to make one government sound better than the other. Trust me, the Chinese, they've got a 200-year plan on this one, minimum. There's one of my commenters, one of my videos, and he put it pretty well. And I guess he's Chinese or whatever. And he, again, not everybody agrees with what I say, but he says it's absolutely lunacy for the United States to even consider going to war with China because of the military strength that they actually have. They actually have quite a bit. I still say, and I'm sticking to my guns, that the average U.S. pilot and soldier are better trained than the probably average Chinese soldier and stuff like that. But you cannot say that the Chinese are a bunch of hacks. I mean, they do have a good military. I mean, just its size alone, even if they were dumber than sticks and couldn't fight worth of beans, which I don't believe is the case, just the sheer numbers of them make them a real threat in the sense if you had to go toe to toe with them. That said, they're trained a hell of a lot better than what we think. Not all of them, I mean, because there's so many levels of training for the Chinese military, but again, their elite forces are probably maybe 40,000 strong in the elite forces, but their average mediocre forces are in the millions. So average mediocre in the millions will trump elites in the thousands, right? So this is one of the huge advantages they have. Now we also know the Chinese in the last past weeks have had like 3 major industrial explosions, and these are kind of odd because of the timing. Now the Tianjin explosion apparently happened the day after they started dumping U.S. currency. So coincidence, maybe. If you again, there's only so many times you could say coincidence. It's almost like a butterfly cause and effect, where one side does something else, and then you get a really completely out of proportion reaction on the other side. So week before, the Chinese waited for the IMF to accept their currency as a world reserve currency. IMF tells them, no, screw you, so to speak, we'll consider you next year. China gets mad. They tell how much gold. They just admitted to having something like, I forget how many tons of gold, but it was a big number. So right now, this is not coming out on the mainstream media, but they've said, yeah, we've got XYZ, 100,000 tons or whatever it is of gold they have, and they're just showing some of it. So now this is also going to put a price on gold. You have to understand, the gold and silver is a big part of this game too. The world elites are, like right now up here in Canada, apparently it's almost impossible to get silver from the mints and stuff like that. I'm not really into that game, so the guys out there that follow it, they'll know more. But something is definitely going on there, and it is corresponding to China, kind of again showing its hand. You pick us a bit, we're going to hit you with a freaking sledgehammer, right? This is what they're doing. So they do this. And then, 3 days in a row, they devalue their currency. Now, as they're devaluing their currency, they're also selling off U.S. treasuries, okay? Because they don't need them anymore. They don't need them anymore. The U.S. economy is done. The U.S. dollar is dead. It just, nobody's told them yet. It's been dead for a while. It's just people still believe in it as a currency. But once that faith goes, and what you're seeing is not so much inside the United States. People are still going to spend U.S. dollars in the United States. Heck, we're even going to still spend some of it up here in Canada, around the border towns, sure. But what you're really looking at is countries around the world are ditching the dollar. The isolation of the United States is well underplayed. Like, you can't even hide this. And that's the problem. It's so easy. A guy like me who's not a financial guy can even find this out. So the day after they start dumping U.S. currencies, guess what happens? Their 10th largest port intention problem gets blown up. Now, I do believe it was a chemical fire, but it's just, I'm thinking it's more like spy BS, spy stuff. It's just a matter of who really done it. But at the end of the day, it's going to be done on behalf of the Rothschild banking system, because that's the Federal Reserve, the IMF. That's all Rothschildism. Now, thing is for these empires fighting, who they're going to get to do it, who knows? But we also seen almost a week to the day what happens. Another two explosions, which the Chinese are keeping this stuff under wraps as much as possible, but it's out there. The second one was in Jiangdong province. I probably said it wrong, but anyway, that's this. There was two explosions there. Again, chemical plants blowing up. I don't know all the details on that, and there's not a lot of information out there on it. But we also know about the Japanese U.S. military base having a small explosion on it as well. And again, when have you last heard of a U.S. military base having weapons explode on it? Has it happened? Yes, it's happened. But it's just, again, maybe it's just coincidence that you get all these explosions in 1 or 2 weeks. Okay, fine, if you want to go with that. As the Chinese are dumping U.S. currency. There are people out there who really terrified in the financial thing. I really don't know what to tell you, because they're right, but the problem is it's so manipulated. They're kicking the can down the road so you won't notice it. You're just going to become gradually more poor again. And it does, I can say, and I'm not tooting my own horn here, but I am telling you that, yes, I've been saying since 2008 that we probably, the next crash, and there's not just me, it's a lot of guys that are, I'm getting this information from, is what they've been saying is that we're not going to see an all-out collapse. We're just going to see the living standard just completely deteriorate slowly, a slow bleed out, meaning let the economy down fast. Because if you do it too fast, you're just going to have uprisings on your hands, right? And that's the thing. So an all-out collapse, who knows? But sorry, I meant to mention. Okay, what one of my commenters said was, with China, for the United States going to war with China, the strategy is to go to war, but the strategy is not to win, because the Chinese, they only do a strategy to win. And there is a lot of truth to it. I'm kind of paraphrasing what he said, and you'll hear it in one of the Q&As, and I'll read his thing. Now, he calls me a dumbass in there too, because he disagrees with me, but he does make some good points about the weaponry and stuff like that. Now we see a few new missile systems and stuff like that the Chinese are displaying. Okay, fair enough. But again, he brought up some good points, so I'll give him, let him slide on that one. But anyway, I always appreciate comments from anybody. It's especially when you get people who don't preach to the choir, because they can give you a different perspective, particularly from the other side. Now, where I disagree with him is that what he doesn't understand is that the United States wants to go to war with China. It's not a matter of just China wanting to go to war. The Chinese don't want to go to war. It's very obvious, because if they wanted to, they would have already. It's the same with the Russians. They don't want to go to war. They're terrified. I agree with Joe Scalzo. I agree with Steve Pachenik. I agree with Paul Craig Roberts. The Chinese and the Russians are terrified. They know the United States is trying to force them into a war. But you have to understand how how the United States is trying to get the war going is by getting China or Russia to strike first. So we know that the Chinese have pretty much said, yeah, the United States is attacking our economy, and we're in a state of war with them. That's official government. You kind of can't deny that, So the thing is that when we see all this going on, again, if the Chinese, and they've said it as well, that if they were in a war with the United States and they were losing, they would launch nukes. Again, we can't have it. Nobody can. Kind of same thing that happened to Moscow when Napoleon invaded. They burnt down Moscow rather than letting Napoleon take it, right? So it's called spite. That's one of those things there. It's spite. It's kind of like the pelican trying to eat the frog, and the frog's arms come out and strangle the pelican. The frog bites the pelican's tongue while he's going down his throat, kind of like, this will be a meal, but it'll be a last one. You know what I mean? If I'm going to die, I'm going to take you with me. So that's kind of the thing we have to keep in mind. And I'm not saying a war with China would be an absolute victory for China, because I don't think anybody would really get that much of an upper hand, to tell you the truth. I think it would, well, we could see North Korea, South Korea. Look, it worked out into a stalemate at some point. I think World War III would work into a stalemate at some point if it didn't go nuclear. The problem is the death and destruction for people starving to death. I think that's one of the things. However, if we are talking Red Dawn style invasion, pretty much in the United States and stuff like that, I don't think it comes in the form that you would, they're not they're, it would be a turkey shoot for any nation to try to invade the United States. But it's also the same trying for them to, the United States to try to get the upper hand on uh, on China, because again, China's got all these missile systems, and I do agree with one of my that commenter that yes, I mean, and this is why I said it would be an island war. They're going to one of the things the Chinese have been working on is missile coastal defense, meaning they got missiles to shoot down cruise missiles, they got missiles to intercept ICBMs, they've got missiles to take out aircraft carriers hundreds of, even 1,000 miles away. So mind you, we also have to keep in mind too that a lot of U.S. aircraft carriers are basically getting near their end of their life. The best way to decommission them is to have them destroyed in battle rather than pay the billions of dollars. I mean, you're only going to lose 8,000 sailors, 5,000 sailors. Okay, fine. Tell their widows that they were brave and whatever. People will buy it, right? So it's worth it to kill the people on the ships, to decommission the ships. So you got to keep that in mind too. That said, again, with the missile systems, how good are they? There's also the possibility of drones that would be going after these missile systems. And this is why Joe Scalise, I think, was saying that the war is planned for around 2023 to 2024 is when they want to have the war, because by that time we also know that the U.S. will have about 20 to 30,000 drones. And another commenter brought this up too. The idea of the drones is that you can simply overwhelm your opponent with numbers. A good statistic was that with the 20 some odd thousand drones, if you space them 2.5 miles apart, you could go around the equator. So, but there's another problem with drones. Okay, you send out your drones to overwhelm an enemy. Okay, here's the problem. They're taking off due east. Okay, so they're heading toward, or due west. They're heading towards from California to China. They're going to go kick ass. All of a sudden, about 10,000 drones started to do, a 90-degree turn, another 90-degree turn, and they're heading straight back, firing the missiles back. Why? Because the drones have been hacked. Why? Because the chips in them were made in China. And the Chinese have been, again, the electronic warfare thing, I think, is going to be a big part of the thing. I think the missiles are going to be the kind of the second battery, not the first battery, because the missiles, I think, it would be taken out by the electronic warfare way too easily. Meaning, I mean, not the ballistic stuff so much, because it's kind of hardwired to go a certain way and that's it, and pretty much unhackable. But the other thing too is that what we might see is a possibility that the Chinese might already have that upper hand. So if they do, again, going to war with China is a bad idea. I think what the United States really wants more is to have China invade Taiwan. Again, it's the same thing that's going on in the Middle East. It's the same plan everywhere. The best thing to do is where the enemy of my enemy is my friend. If you can get them to fight each other, then they're not fighting you. And I think that's the way they want to burn up Russia's army. Again, is to get an Eastern conflict going. Let the people of the Eastern Europe get killed in a battle with Russia. Meanwhile, the United States could just back it on the back end, not take the losses, and then of course on the other side get Japan and China fighting. That would be the best thing possible for the United States, because it would give them a place to dump trillions and trillions of dollars of their debt. So that's the idea. Now, again, I know I have a lot of Americans that think I'm picking on the United States. I'm not. I'm picking on your government. I mean, now that you know this stuff, this is what's going on. This is what U.S. foreign policy is. And no, it's not for the betterment of mankind. I mean, it is really, really getting down to the wire. We don't know. I mean, maybe 2023 is the years that they're looking, 2023, 2024, but there's enough going on now that, again, black swans could start appearing. And the biggest black swan we have right now is because Russia and China, well, it's more China than anything. Like, Russia isn't really fighting back. They're just holding their line. They're just they're just basically keeping a proxy going in the Ukraine, but they're not really fighting. They're basically, they're there, but they're not there. They're not engaging in all these. They're not really backing Assad in the sense of giving them, frontline troops. They're not doing that. They're not getting sucked into another Afghan-style war. The Russians have already learned their lesson. They're not stupid to fall for it the second time. They're not stupid enough to fall for it in Ukraine. They're not stupid enough to fall for it in anywhere. And speaking of the Ukraine, just to kind of divert a little bit here. Looks like U.S. And I guess, well, right now to all the Ukrainian oligarchs, you're welcome. You're welcome from Canada. Why? Because out of the $495 million, I can imagine out of the $17 billion that have went from Europe and the United States to Ukraine, well, it looks like a lot of that money is ending up in Cyprus. It looks like again, new boss, same as the old boss. So what's happened in Ukraine? Well, George Soros gets in there with U.S. money. Okay. and basically arms a bunch of neo-Nazis to overthrow the government. Now, this is part of the U.S. foreign policy with the State Department and Victoria Nuland. They went in there. I mean, the EU, IMF, Anglo-American Empire overthrow. A lot of people in Europe are starting to ditch, try to move away from the United States because they realize that the sign is nigh. But anyway, it's pretty much super, super obvious that this was what was designed in the first place, was to basically overthrow the Yanukovych government so that they could take over. Now, all the money that they've been giving in there has been going to these oligarchs and stuff like that, and not to the people. Not, it goes to the banks and stuff like that, goes to prop up the proxy armies, but it doesn't go to help anybody. So with that said, they could, for that kind of money, they could have bought peace with. They could have used that money to bribe the Eastern people rather than kill them. So again, it's kind of funny how they, like how much stupidity goes into these plans that just don't work. It's whoever's running the show just doesn't know what they're doing. The other thing we look at is, with all this money going into there and all that, they basically stole all the gold from the Ukraine, replaced it with gold-plated lead bars. They've, so that's what the Federal Reserve has done to the Ukraine. They've also, again, pretty much Goldman Sachs and Monsanto have been in there stealing the farmland pennies on the dollar. Again, same thing that happened in Russia when it collapsed in the '91. Again, sell all the resources to the oligarchs pennies on the dollar. Same thing that's happening to the United States right now. The next thing that happened is that you now have a civil war going on in the Ukraine, again, courtesy of the United States, really, when you think about it. And of course, Russia is backing the other side, so you have a proxy war between Russia and the United States, which neither side can actually confirm that they are backing, because if they do, then they're admitting that they're actually in a direct conflict with each other, which changes the game drastically. Ukraine is just being thrown under the bus. That's the only thing that's happening there. There's no good guys there. So while that's happening, people are losing their pensions, their economy's tanking in the Ukraine. It's just a complete disaster. So their new boss is worse than the old boss, in the sense that at least the old boss didn't have them in a civil war. And not only that, they're losing all their resources. Why? Because they can't pay the debt that they owe. They can't pay it back. So guess who gets all the stuff for free? Yeah, you guessed it, the central bankers. The same thing is happening in Greece. You can't pay us back? Okay, well, we'll take your fine art. We'll take your islands. We'll take this. We'll sell this off. We'll sell that off. And they never help the people. They help themselves, right? So we see all that going on. Now, swinging back to China and Japan, again, we have to keep in mind that Japan is basically, as economy has been, pretty much been destroyed by the United States currency. Because they keep new quantitative easing. That's the thing. Now, over here, again, the U.S. Rates, are they going to go up? Or are they not? Who knows? A lot of people are calling for economic black swans. Again, the markets will go. If you've been watching what's been happening in the past week or two, remember, and we have to keep in mind that the U.S. stock market is not the economy. That's just a bunch of Fortune 500 companies that are playing around with everybody's retirement and stuff like that. You see it go completely wombat in one day, and then the next day it rebounds. But there was no reason for it to go wombat, no reason for it to recover. So you have to ask, well, what's really going on behind the scenes that they're not telling us? And that's where you start to see all these other, manipulations. So Goldman Sachs dumps a whole bunch of paper gold on the market and tells nobody. Then all of a sudden the price of gold drops like a rock. The world elites go out and buy the gold and silver for pennies on the dollar. Well, maybe not pennies on the dollar, but you get the idea, for cheaper. And then they let it go back up again, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to screw everybody else over, right? And well, the Chinese are playing the same game too, right? But the difference is the Chinese are taking that gold and they're backing their currency with it. The United States is, its currency is not backed by anything, and people are starting to question, do we really want to start, do trade in this currency? And that's the whole thing. As long as countries are using the U.S. dollar, they can never prosper. This is, there are people that have always known this. It's just, this is why you need sovereign nations. I mean, Greece, why is it such a bad case? Well, it can't devalue its currency. Why? Because it's tied to the euro. It can't get away from the euro. Now, if it could devalue its currency, it could balance its economy. Greece has it's always had a lot of problems, sure, but it could set itself up for recovery. Now, the Chinese currency, how manipulated is it? Well, it's manipulated, but so is the U.S. currency. But the thing is when the real economic collapse hits, and I think, again, the black swan is really coming from China, in the sense that they're playing, they're pushing the United States into a box that What's that? Anyway, sorry, but yeah, so they're pushing the U.S. economy into a box that they can't get away from. So it's kind of like think of that scene in Star Wars where they're driving through flying through the asteroid mine. Well, that's kind of what's going on right now. So you're fine until something hits you, right? So, but when will you hit something? Who knows? So we have to really watch that. But we do know that these weapons and missile systems that the Chinese have been developing them. Their parade was, just to give you an idea of the size of the parade, it was something like 2,000 or 3,000 vehicles, a couple of hundred aircraft, and 12,000 personnel. That's just for the parade. You know what I mean? So we do know they got some hypersonic missiles and stuff like that. Do they work as well as advertised? Of course, every country says their weaponry is the best, right? So is it really? Who knows? Everything has its Achilles heel. I don't think everything works as good as advertised, but in this day and age, even 1950s stuff is dangerous as hell. You know what I mean? Think about that. The missile age is basically giving people, even with low-tech missiles, the advantage of long-range destruction, right? So there's those things to keep in mind, and I'm not even talking nuclear. Now, next to that, we also see over there, again, nobody talking at all in the mainstream media about the migrant crisis. Why, the butterfly effect that was, the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi. Basically, U.S. foreign policy. I mean, I find it so funny that you've got all these peoples in the United States talk about how Hillary Clinton should go to jail for a bunch of emails. Meanwhile, okay, you had this poor dead child, 3-year-old child, wash up on the shore, and he's probably just one of many over there in Greece. The wife died. I think the husband lived. And basically, again, desperate people trying to get out of a desperate situation of a Mad Max world that was started because of the overthrow of Gaddafi. Okay, U.S. foreign policy. So that's exactly what happened. And because of that, it's very, very clear that, no one's going to go to jail for this. This is the ultimate crimes against humanity. And also, we have to keep another thing in mind, is that with this migrant crisis too, I mean, over here in Canada, we're taking on 25,000 more of them. And we're also seeing over there, where, in Europe, that they can't deal with the crisis either. Now, people say, well, it's ISIS's fault. Yes, but where did ISIS come from? Well, it's exactly what Gaddafi said. He said, look, if you overthrow me, it will destabilize the region. You'll have such sectarian violence, the entire Middle East will burn. Now, it might not have been his exact words, but pretty darn close. Was he wrong? Of course he wasn't wrong. It's the same thing that happened to Iraq when George Bush disbanded the Iraqi Republican Guard. They were going to hand over Saddam Hussein. And, many U.S. generals were saying, no, we need the Iraqi Republican Guard to keep order. But they didn't. They let it go into chaos, didn't they? But that's the whole plan, order out of chaos, Henry Kissinger. And we had Henry Kissinger out there saying, yes, if China doesn't get on board with the New World Order, exact words, they must get on board with the New World Order, because if they don't, the conflict will wipe us both out. So what he's telling you, and this is a guy who got Vietnam going on a lie, and he's telling you, we're going to war with China. So is George Soros, all them. Was it George Soros out there invested in Peabody Energy? Apparently, this, right after the crash, again, he comes in, all of a sudden the stocks go up, higher than these people manipulate the system. They know the crash is coming. They know how to manipulate it, but more importantly, they know how to control it. Now, the thing is the all-out economic collapse. This is the thing that I tell people: no collapse till war comes. That's my take on it, because if it hasn't collapsed by now, it's manipulated. It's manipulated. It's manipulated. The whole stock market, the whole economy, it's manipulated. That's all you need to know. So if it hasn't collapsed by now, it's because it can't collapse when they keep propping it up. So at some point, yes, there's going to be bubbles popping and bursting, but they're going to keep kicking the can down the road. QE4 is coming to the States, but that's going to lead to hyperinflation. Now, the hyperinflation can be kind of dismantled through one means: the death and debt-based economy. Okay, if people aren't going to no longer sell their oil and goods in U.S. dollars, or they're starting to ditch it. Even Saudi Arabia is starting, but Saudi Arabia has no friends, so at some point they're going to get destabilized too, which they're kind of in the process of that. Turkey may switch towards Russia. When it comes down to an actual shooting war, I think they're going to be more pro-Russia. But again, it's kind of one of those things that, nations are trying to get away from the U.S. currency because they know it's death-based. Death and debt-based economy means you're going to go to war with people who don't take your currency. And this is what many Americans are actually starting to figure out. They're like, oh, geez, this is why we are always at a state of war. Now, who we're at a state of war and why we're at a state of war is always kind of speculative. But at the end of the day, most of the wars, all wars are bankers' wars. We know that. But we know a lot of wars are fought in the name of Israel. Anything in the Middle East is pretty much for Israel, right? But there's another aspect too, the hegemony thing of who are the biggest superpowers in the world. Well, you're really looking at three major superpowers: Russia, China, and the United States. European Union as a whole, possibly, but again, it's only as strong as its alliances. Is NATO really as strong as you think it is? Commitment-wise, that these are things to consider. I don't think they are. There's many European countries that are talking about. They've been talking for a while, such as Poland and Germany, where they're kind of doing their own kind of mini NATO kind of thing to come to each other's aid, that type of thing. So we do see these things going on. We also see over China, India, Iran, Pakistan probably going to get in on this deal. Egypt's probably going to get in on this deal, and it's basically something they've been talking about for a while. Next to the Asian Investment Infrastructure Bank that they've been talking about, they've also been talking about their own version of a NATO. So think about that. That's the ultimate counter to NATO. Is China, picture China and India actually and Russia joining military force. That is a pretty darn big and powerful force to deal with. Much bigger than what NATO can muster up, almost guaranteed. NATO isn't really that big when you think about it. It's only big to defend against Russia. But to defend against Russia and China and India, if India decides to go along, that could be a big problem. And India's pretty well armed too. So is Pakistan, but who knows? Who knows which way they're going to go. That said, we do know the Iranians again getting the S-300 missile systems. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. But at the end of the day, look, at some point, particularly in the States, I mean, there's going to have to be an example set. And that example is going to have to come from the law enforcement and the military. So if I do have law enforcement and military down there that are, in the States or whatever, because they have access to find things out, contact the judges and the lawyers you trust the most. The ones with the balls the size of elephants. And what you need to do, okay, is one charge, only one charge. That's all it'll take. Crimes against humanity. You've got the Libya destabilization through U.S. foreign policies. You start at the top, the people who in the Congress and in the Senate, the president, the vice presidents, all that. You can get them all. You can also do this with Tony Blair and David Cameron and George Bush, Senior, George Bush Jr. Get them all. And you get all their administration, everything. Crimes against humanity. If you can prove one connection to the Syrian genocide, okay, or the migrant genocide, we're talking 4,000 people dead. These are genocides. The Iraq War was now openly admitted as a false thing. We need to put these people in jail, because if we do not restore rule of law, the alternative is Mad Max world. And I think a lot of officers out there in the States get this, but the problem is that they don't know what to do about it. Get your evidence, present it to the people. Present it, and when you lose your job, you go to the news. You go to the alternative news. You blog about it. You really get it out there. Look, Tony Blair cannot walk into a public place without somebody harassing him. Neither can George Bush. Why? Because these people, they're shamed. They may have gotten away with murder, mass murder. They may have gotten away with complete genocides. I mean, again, the WMD is a complete lie. It doesn't matter if George Bush was stupid on this one. He might have been stupid, and there were people out there saying, yeah, we need a president we can manipulate, but this guy's going to be really easy because he's really stupid. And he was stupid. But at that said, Madame Albright, all those kind of gaggleheads, Hillary Clinton is the new Madame Albright. She was the one. We came, we saw, we killed him. Ha-ha. But the thing is they overthrew a government with no contingency plan to stabilize the region. Okay? Same thing in Egypt, all these other places. There's never any idea to stabilize the region. It's to destabilize. Their goal right now is only to overthrow Assad. They barely talk about overthrowing ISIS. So yeah, we got to get rid of ISIS, but we got to get rid of that Assad, because look, Assad is the army that's there. Assad is the Syrian army is the army that is willing to fight for Syria. They're willing to fight ISIS. They're willing to fight the Al Qaeda. They're willing to fight all Al Nusra Front, all that. They're willing to fight these guys. So logic. Let's go blow up the guys who are willing to fight, so we don't have to send our troops there. But you see, that's the goal. I mean, again, they're going to say to the U.S. and Canadian and British and whoever else they send there, don't worry, boots on the ground in Syria is coming. It's coming after the next election in the States for sure. Possibly Canada will. again, you can read between the lines. We're going to be sending troops there. The thing is that don't worry, you're going to get a medal when you come back. Well, how many parts of you come back, who knows? But I have a feeling it's going to be worse than Iraq, so it'll be like Fallujah on steroids. But at the end of the day, when do we say enough of the silliness? This was manufactured to begin with. This was definitely something that the U.S. foreign policy wanted on behalf of Israel to destabilize. Again, this is about destabilizing the pipelines. It's about stealing the minerals, the gold, the oil, the the opium fields, all that. Again, for Pfizer Corporation, they didn't, they're making a killing off the Afghanistan opium fields. Literally, they're making it money hand over fist, but they killed a lot of people to get this stuff, right? So yes, you can link them, get them all, the CEOs, and you don't find the company, you find the people who made the decisions. You find the politicians, and you don't find them, you put them in jail for crimes against humanity. They have purposely created laws that are immoral. And an immoral law, I think there's constitutions in just about every country that say if it's an immoral law and it's designed to create malice or harm, there's an obligation to rise up against it. And that this is exactly what the death and debt-based economy needs, is people to stand up against it. And the only ones that are going to be able to really pull it off is the henchmen that are supposed to go and enforce it, i.e. law enforcement and military. So unless you want to be fighting Russians and Chinese, and right now it doesn't look like the Chinese are going to back down anytime soon, they go to the beat of their own drum. They have a 200-year plan minimum. Look, Ming Dynasty, what was the other dynasty? The Han Dynasty, those things lasted for a long time. Why? Because they didn't think about 2 minutes down the road. They thought long term, right? And do you think they've changed? I don't think so. And we do know that the Chinese, again, we can't underestimate their abilities, particularly for the training. These guys do train pretty hard. Heck, the women train. If you've ever seen just the Chinese women training, you realize that if we go toe to toe with these people, bayonet to bayonet, well, the thing is they still use bayonets for a reason. Why? Because they're going to get that close to you. You know what I mean? So you think about it. I wouldn't the Chinese military. I don't underestimate their capabilities. I don't think it's as much as they boast, but it's just the sheer numbers. No one's going to win in this conflict. It's just going to be a lot of dead people and a lot of rich bankers. So either we put the bankers in jail or we all die. That's pretty much the bottom line. And again, watch the stock market. As the stock market gets more crazy, you're going to see more crazy things happen. So I'd really like to see those brave law enforcement military actually step up, care more about your pension. You're not going to get it anyway. Care more about your job security. You're not going to get it anyway. If you want to go down in history as a hero, you actually got to do the right thing, and that's restore rule of law. No vigilantism, no knocking people off, none of that stuff. No. If we are a nation of laws up here in Canada, and you are a nation of laws down there in the United States, and if you're a nation of laws in Britain, and the Magna Carta is, pretty much the nation, British law that went pretty much all throughout Europe and North America, if that is the law that we are truly meant to uphold, and if they're good laws, we must uphold them. The alternative is death. That simple. It's that simple. So again, we've got to keep an eye on what China's doing. For those who are in the system, you have the ability to see and research better than anything I could ever do. Again, if you're a CIA agent or you're a DHS agent or a Mossad agent or MI6 or a CSIS agent, and you're listening to this, I would say this: you guys can get into the stuff I can't. But if I can find out this much on just listening to governments speak and just watching a few news things, first off, try to disprove what I'm saying. Good luck with that. But secondly, if you can get more out of it than I can, it's your obligation and your duty to go above your pay grade here. It's your obligation to go and really, really take it to these guys. Get some brave prosecutors. One charge. Don't go after them for everything. One charge. Crimes against humanity. You can hang them all. I mean, in some countries, they'll be gracious enough to even supply the ammo. Most countries, they're just going to put them behind bars. But the nice thing is, we could put them behind bars for terrorism and genocide, meaning 1,000 years, no possibility of parole, no visitation, no communication with the outside world, and possibly charge them in a state, if you can get them in a state where death penalty, it's not revenge, it's punishment. To set the example for these world elites that you cannot go around and be a genocidal maniac. There is no such thing as too big to fail or too big to jail, and that's where we got to start. Start with the bankers. Get the politicians that okay to all the stuff the bankers have done. get them on the stuff they've openly admitted. Very, very simple. All right, so I guess we'll keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on the stock market because it's going crazy too, and also keep an eye on just the crazy explosions that have been going on the past couple of weeks. But also keep an eye on what the Chinese are doing because it seems like it's a bit of a ping pong game back and forth between Russia and China. Like both things are going on, but it seems like one week they're really hammering China in one way, and then on the other side they're hammering Russia. Now, China and Russia have been, fighting back in kind of more covert ways, where they've been basically, doing cyber attacks, possibly stuff like that. But they've also been going, with the Chinese. Again, the Chinese is the economic powerhouse. Russia's the military, right? I still say Russia has the upper hand over China, military strength-wise. Numbers, again, Russia backed by China is a hell of a lot of numbers. So those numbers are becoming higher in quality. Again, you can just look at some of these photos. You can see very clearly that they're not that badly armed. Yes, I would say the majority of them are armed 1950 style SKSs and stuff like that. That's their basic army. But I'd say the guys in the middle, they're pretty well off, and their navy is big enough. Now, the navies nowadays, the nice thing about the navies nowadays is that they are small enough that it's going to be a very small-scale Navy war anyway. Look, middle of Cold War, you're talking, 3,500 speedboats that Russia had, a couple of, 1,400 warships. We talk World War II, tens of, 30,000 ships, and, they lost count. We don't fight those type of wars anymore, but that said, we also know China has been known to put artillery guns on moving decks, such as freighters and stuff like that, and we do know that they have been arming up to 3,500 merchant ships. Now, what they're arming them with, that I don't know, but it's probably more license, putting like special forces guys on there and stuff like that. But anyway, yeah, there we go. I guess I'm going to leave it at about that. So if you do like this kind of content, please consider making a donation to the channel. Links down below. Thank you so much to everybody has. It's just for the channel, not for beer on Friday nights or like that. Next to that, if you do believe this is an important type of video, don't be afraid to share them. I do understand people get uncomfortable sharing these kind of things because they don't want to be considered conspiracy theorists, etc., etc. But we're getting to the point where, and this is something I'm finding, and I actually had a conversation with a girl I know today who wouldn't be ever caught dead watching these kind of videos and stuff like that, just because most people are kind of unaware of what's going on in the world, but they know there's something wrong. And I started talking about the economy and stuff like that, and I mentioned that, I do YouTube videos and stuff like that. She goes, oh yeah, on what? And I said, well, geopolitical stuff. I said, right now there's been a couple explosions in China, and it's most likely a part of this, that, and the other thing. And I started talking about, the 2008 crisis and stuff, and not overwhelming them and New World Order and Illuminati and alien fish people or whatever, the lizard people. No, I don't go down that rabbit hole. There's no need to. All you need to do is explain corruption. And the thing is what I've been telling people, is that, they're becoming more responsive to it. They'll watch a video like this, and then at first they'll dismiss it. Okay, if you can get them to watch it. But what's happening, when I'm finding what's happening, is there's more people that I know that are starting to come out of the closet a bit. A lot of people want to ask me about this stuff, because this is not stuff you talk about around the dinner table, right? But for me, I'm just kind of like, well, if you ask me, I'll tell you. And that type of thing. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but it is kind of a scary topic when you think about it. But that's the problem. Nobody talks about the topic. It's the biggest topic of our time, the biggest threat to humanity. And it's done by a bunch of psychopaths. And the thing is, it's done by even worse psychopaths. They're incompetent. I think it was STG Bull was talking about how, just to wrap this up, like Rockefeller, JP Morgan, all these guys, that they were psychopaths. They were cold, they're calculated, they were real shysters. They really knew how to scam the system, but they were smart. They knew how to do it. They were the psychopaths and everybody was smart. But it seems like the people that have, that their family heirs are just stupid as hell. But that's a problem in the day and age we live in. We live in an age where people are void of think. They don't know how to think properly, and because they don't know how to think properly, they think like 2-year-olds. They're emotional, and you can see this clearly in our world leaders. That you get guys say like Vladimir Putin, love him or hate him. Again, not a good guy in my books, but a very calculated man, knows how to play. He knows the art of subtlety. The Chinese, again, Xi Jinping, again, very, very subtle. Acts like an adult, that type of thing. So where you're looking at the sideshow going on, and like right now, I mean, I'd be embarrassed to be watching, to admit that I was an American during the election. It's like, oh my God, look at the sideshows we have here. They're embarrassing us. And the American people are not an embarrassed people. They're a proud people. And again, I'm in a neighboring country and stuff like that. And every American I've ever met, they've always, been level-headed people. I'm sure there's quite a few crazies in any country you go to, sure. But the average person there is decent. Problem is their governments will make them look so bad. But the problem is their government, that is the goal, is to make hatred for the United States on U.S. foreign policy. Paul Craig Roberts called this out very, very well. And the idea is to create so much hatred that the United States would have to defend itself from everybody. Does that not sound like a very familiar kind of protocol? I.e. Israel. That's exactly what they do. Make everybody around you your enemy, so everybody feels, so the rest of the world has sympathy for you, so you can justify doing anything you want. Well, that's the same policy, right? It's the same policy. Now, I'm not against Jewish people or like that, but I do understand Zionism, whether it's Jewish Zionism or Christian Zionism, is a supremacy movement. And unfortunately, if you look at the United States, the neocons, that's what they are. They're Zionists. And these guys are the lunatics of the lunatics. And that's what keeps you into war. Almost every one of these ones that are telling us they're going to war are Zionists. So keep that in mind. The Chinese know this. The Chinese aren't backing down. But again, the Chinese are subtle. They come in under the radar. It's like, okay, yeah, you can do this to us or do that to us, and then we'll hit you over here, and you're not going to notice it. And that's what they've been doing. And it's the same with the Russians. Again, they're very subtle. You won't see it coming. They know what your response to their plan is going to be. That's the whole thing about, command and conquer. It's a chess game, right? And right now, I think the Chinese are playing that economic chess game better than anybody. Are they corrupt? Yes. All the governments around the world are corrupt. All the governments around the world are failing the people. That's absolute. Some countries are better off than others. Again, I'm not trading my country, Canada, for anybody else's. We could be doing a hell of a lot worse, and we will be. And it has nothing to do with who you vote for. It's going to have everything to do with that. It doesn't matter who you vote for. That's the thing that people around the world have to, that most people are waking up to the fact of. And this is why there's, I make such a call towards law enforcement, military. Again, I know most of them won't even watch a video like this, but if you can get it in front of their eyes, again, if you can only wake up a handful, it doesn't take much for it to spread. All they have to do is disprove the stuff I'm saying in the video. That's all you got to do. That's it. That's your only task. Good luck. You know what I mean? So anyway, rate, subscribe, share, comment, like. Be true to yourself. Be true to others. Always do the right thing. And have yourselves a great day. G'day, hi, and welcome. Alright, WW3 update. Let's get into this. Okay, it's kind of funny when I do these videos. Well, it's not funny, haha, funny, but kind of strange how things go in spurts, right? Usually everything we see is a reaction to something going on in the world, where everything seems normal, dies down, you don't get a World War III update, which, when I don't do World War III updates, that's a good thing. That means nothing's going on in the world that we have to concern ourselves about. That said, there's so much going on that it's almost impossible to follow it all, that type of thing. But if there's any doubt that we're in a state of war, like the Chinese have said, with the U.S. government. Now, mind you, I'm a Canadian, but you have to understand World War III. Even people in the Marshall Islands or Papua New Guinea, they're going to be involved in this. It doesn't matter where they go. It's going to be engulf the world in a lot of ways. Just the command and conquer kind of aspect of it, island hopping and continent hopping. There's going to be people all over the place fighting everybody, right? So just this proxy, that proxy, and it's all going to play out. But it looks like China's just had its one of those big victory parades again. I think the 70th anniversary for them. After World War II, and they're showcasing some new missiles and stuff. Now the thing is with the Chinese stuff, it's kind of funny because they've been North Korea's done this, China's done this in the past, where they showcase this new stuff, but it's just like it's icing. It's just there's nothing in it. These missiles sometimes are made out of paper mache, sometimes they're real, sometimes they're actual metal castings, and it looks real, but it's not real. So we don't know, right? So we do know, for example, Iran with its wooden aircraft carriers that they're building to scale. It's like, okay, what's that all about? Things like that. So with the Chinese, you never know. But the thing is they are capable of making stuff, and I'm more inclined to believe that yes, they do have these new weapons. And they're probably showcasing them on purpose to kind of give you a little bit of the upper, a glimpse of what they have. And they do have a lot. Again, are they a 4 million man army, a 400 million man army, a 750 million man army, or anybody that's capable of age of fighting, billion man army, whatever they're going to be, right? You're talking about one of the largest, demographics of people on the planet, right? So they got a lot of people to choose from. So we don't really know what their true potential strength is. I'm sure in an all-out war, the amount of volunteers they would have, I mean, it's like any country. Somebody invades your country, people will volunteer to fight the invaders. That said, what we're seeing, something interesting, again, if you have any, doubts that we're not at war with China, and we're not just at war with China, we're at war with China, Russia, and stuff like that. Remember, the world is really divided into two categories: the Anglo-American Empire and the Eurasian Pacific Empire. These are empires that are fighting. There are no good guys here. There's empires. That's it. And their New World Order versus the Anglo-American New World Order. You don't want to be under any of them. That's So you got communism on one side, and you've got totalitarian fascism on the other side. So who wins, right? Everybody seems to be losing, but no one seems to be winning on this, right? So there's no good guys here. So that said, we've seen again the three ports that have been blown up. One in Tianjin province, and the 10th largest shipping port in the world. And there's still speculations on who's behind it. I would more suspect the Japanese than anybody, but it would be on behalf of the U.S. because you have to understand what China has done in the past couple of weeks. We've seen the stock market going long back crazy and stuff like that in the past couple of weeks, right? But also, China's been dumping U.S. treasuries, and I think they've done it to a tune of 100 billion, maybe even a trillion. So they own $4 trillion worth of U.S. debt. So they start dumping that currency. I mean, the U.S. has got to be scrambling. There's got to be a trail of bodies on this one. I'm sure they're going to start showing up. Just watch for dead bankers everywhere. I'm not making any threats. It's just, it's a currency war, trade war, shooting war, right? And right now, this is definitely trade war. So what's going to happen is that, again, I'm not saying the Chinese side of things is any less corrupt. Sure it is. But the thing is that they're fighting back economically. And you won't hear it on the mainstream media, but I mean, again, that's big news when the Chinese dump that much U.S. currency back on the market. In other words, the United States is headed for a Zimbabwean currency. So if you wake up one morning and you're an American, and you wake up and a loaf of bread is suddenly $18,000, don't be alarmed by that. That's just the eggs, the chickens coming home to roost. This is exactly what's happened, in Mexico. I remember years ago a teacher asked me, why is a loaf of bread 10,000 pesos in Mexico? And I'm like, why wouldn't they just make it a buck? It doesn't make sense. Why would you print 10,000? Why would you say 10,000? It's just make it a dollar. And once you understand why it's 10,000 pesos, then you understand what's going to happen to the United States. It's called hyperinflation. And the thing is to stave off the hyperinflation, well, we know the United States, again, I know there's a lot of my American viewers don't like it when I say this, but I'm telling you this because you need to know this. They have a debt and debt-based economy, meaning you either take their currency, sell all your commodities such as oil or whatever, wheat, you name it, metals, lumber, whatever, you sell it, you trade it globally in US dollars, or you get democracy JDAMs like most of these Middle Eastern countries have gotten. And again, that's the fight that's going on right now. So the Chinese, well, they're doing the same things, but again, the difference between the Chinese, what they've been doing is where the United States has been blowing up bridges, where the United States has been blowing up bridges, China's been going building bridges. Now, anywhere China goes, particularly in Africa and stuff like that, the United States goes and destabilizes. Nigeria, starts wanting to develop its resources. China offers to help to do this. All of a sudden, you've got a Boko Haram problem, right? So you get the idea. And it's always coincidental that these well-funded jihadi groups show up anywhere China seems to want to develop, right? So you get the idea that there's a dirty war going on here. I'm not trying to make one government sound better than the other. Trust me, the Chinese, they've got a 200-year plan on this one, minimum. There was one of my commenters, one of my videos, and he put it pretty well. And I guess he's Chinese or whatever. And he, again, not everybody agrees with what I say, but he says it's absolutely lunacy for the United States to even consider going to war with China because of the military strength that they actually have. They actually have quite a bit. I still say, and I'm sticking to my guns, that the average U.S. pilot and soldier are better trained than the probably average Chinese soldier and stuff like that. But you cannot say that the Chinese are a bunch of hacks. I mean, they do have a good military. I mean, just its size alone